The alien jungle stood like a wall of green and shadow at the edge of the colony, its twisted vines hanging low, its giant leaves hiding shapes that moved when the wind was still. Every alien who lived near it spoke in quiet voices about the place. They said it was a maze of poison and teeth, a place that swallowed the brave and the foolish alike, a place where even the sunlight seemed afraid to enter. Cole stood at the boundary that morning, his boots on the dusty ground of the colony, his eyes on the endless dark ahead. The air was warm, but he felt the cool breath of the jungle drifting toward him, heavy with strange smells, sweet and rotten at the same time. Behind him a small crowd had gathered, tall insect-like aliens with shimmering shells and wide black eyes. They whispered to each other in clicks and hums, their bodies shifting uneasily as they watched the human. He carried little, a long blade strapped to his back, a small pack on his shoulder, his steps light as if the danger ahead did not weigh on him at all. One of the elders, his shell scarred and dull with age, moved forward and clicked a warning. His voice translated into human speech through a small device at his chest. He told Cole that no one returned from the jungle, that the ground itself was alive, that the trees could kill without moving, and that the beast inside would tear him apart. Before he could even scream, Cole only gave a small grin and adjusted the strap of his pack. The elder leaned closer, his black eyes reflecting the green wall ahead, and told him that the last alien who entered had been found months later as nothing but clean white bones. His voice was heavy, full of the weight of countless warnings, but Cole's gaze never wavered from the jungle. To him it was not a wall, it was a door. A soft breeze passed through the tall grass, carrying the calls of unseen creatures. The sound was not like birds or animals on earth. It was sharper, stranger, filled with a strange rhythm that made the skin crawl. Cole breathed it in as though it was fresh air on a mountain top, and with one last look at the crowd, he stepped forward into the shade, the vines swaying gently as if to greet him. Inside the jungle the light faded fast. The sun above turned into broken shafts of gold that cut through the mist and leaves. The air grew thick, almost wet. The ground was soft and uneven, roots as thick as his leg twisted in all directions. Each step had to be chosen carefully, and still he walked without hesitation, his boots sinking slightly into the moss-covered earth. The smell of the place was stronger now, part flower, part decay, a perfume that promised both life and death. Somewhere high above in the green canopy something moved, a shadow gliding from branch to branch. Cole tilted his head and listened, his human ears catching the faint scrape of claws on bark. He reached for his blade, but did not draw it yet. His mind sharp, his senses open, the jungle whispered to him through the sound of distant clicks and hisses, every voice a reminder that he was not alone. Far behind him the aliens watched from the edge, until the mist swallowed him, their clicking voices softer now, as though afraid the jungle might hear. The elder shook his head and turned away, certain the human would never come back. But Cole's figure kept moving between the towering trunks until he was gone from sight, only the rustle of disturbed leaves marking his path. Deeper in, he passed a giant flower the size of his torso, its petals bright red with black spots, the center pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. A sweet scent drifted from it, pulling at his senses, but he kept walking. The vines above swayed though there was no wind. The ground shifted as if something huge moved far below the soil, yet Cole's pace did not slow. His mind locked on some unseen goal deeper inside. The sound of the colony was gone now, replaced by the endless chorus of alien life, strange whistles, deep roars far in the distance, tiny scratching noises close at hand. His fingers brushed the hilt of his blade more than once, but still he kept it sheathed, saving his strength, his calm at odds with the danger pressing in from all sides. The air grew hotter, the mist thicker, small glowing insects floated in slow patterns, their blue light reflecting in his eyes. The smell of water reached him, and he paused, tilting his head to listen. Beneath the jungle's song there was the faint trickle of a stream. He marked its direction and continued, every step carrying him further from safety, every step taking him closer to the heart of the place. Somewhere in the shadows 2 round eyes watched him, unblinking, their owner hidden. A soft hiss passed through the air, but Cole did not turn. He knew the rules of a wild place. Never show fear, never rush, always keep moving, his boots pressed into the damp soil, his shoulders steady. the green darkness swallowing him like a deep ocean. And so the human entered the deadly alien jungle while the colony whispered his name, certain they would never hear it again. But Cole's story was only beginning, and the jungle, for all its hunger, would soon learn that some prey was not prey at all. The moment Cole stepped deeper past the wall of giant leaves, the world behind him faded away. The air grew thicker with each breath, warm and wet like a heavy blanket pressed against his skin. The ground beneath his boots was soft and springy, covered in moss and layers of rotting leaves that whispered as he moved. Above him, the canopy of tangled branches shut out most of the sunlight, leaving only thin golden spears that pierced the mist. Small drifting motes of light floated in those beams, dancing like tiny spirits, watching his every step. The jungle was alive in ways the colony could never imagine. Vines hung down like green serpents, swaying gently though no wind touched them. Flowers larger than his head pulsed and shifted their colors as he passed from red to purple to a strange deep blue that seemed to swallow light. Somewhere to his left a low growl rumbled through the undergrowth, but Cole kept moving, his eyes scanning the shadows, his ears drinking in every sound, the rhythm of his steps slow and careful, each foot placed, as though he was moving across a frozen pond. High in the branches above, something small and quick darted from limb to limb, a flash of orange fur, a flick of a long tail, the sound of claws scratching bark. Cole's hand brushed the hilt of his blade, but he did not draw it. He could feel the eyes of the forest on him, testing him, waiting to see if he would panic. But he walked on with the steady calm of someone who had crossed dangerous ground before and lived. A sudden sharp cry rang out ahead, high and piercing. It cut through the constant hum of insects and the soft hiss of moving leaves. Cole froze and listened. The sound came again, this time closer. He moved forward through a curtain of vines into a small clearing where the light pooled brighter than anywhere else so far. In the center stood a tall plant with a stalk as thick as his leg. From its top hung a heavy pod split open to reveal rows of needle-sharp spines. Beneath it lay the remains of something small and furry, its bones white and clean, the ground around it slick with a dark sticky fluid. Cole stepped around it, noting how the plant's spines tilted ever so slightly toward him as he passed, like the slow turn of a predator's head. Beyond the clearing the terrain shifted. The ground sloped downward, the air cooled slightly, and the sounds of running water grew stronger. Cole followed the sound until he reached a narrow stream flowing between smooth black rocks. The water glimmered silver under the filtered light, and tiny fish with transparent bodies darted away from his shadow. He crouched down and dipped a hand into the stream. The water was cool and fresh, a welcome taste after the heavy air. As he drank, he felt a prickling along the back of his neck. He turned his head slowly and saw them. Two creatures crouched on a fallen log, not 20 steps away, each the size of a large cat, their fur a pale green that blended almost perfectly with the mossy wood, their round eyes too large for their small faces, their ears tall and twitching. They made soft chirping noises as they tilted their heads at him. Cole stayed still, his hand resting near his blade, but the creatures only blinked slowly, then hopped down from the log and moved closer in short, cautious bursts, their noses twitching. As they sniffed the air around him, he reached into his pack and pulled out a strip of dried meat. Holding it low in an open palm, one of the creatures sniffed it, then took it in tiny, quick bites. The other kept its gaze fixed on the trees behind him, its ears turning at some sound too faint for him to hear. After they ate, they stayed near, walking just far enough to the side to keep him in view, their eyes bright with curiosity. Cole filled his canteen and followed the stream further, the water leading him deeper into the jungle. The mist thickened again until every breath felt like drinking air. The plants here grew stranger, their leaves covered in shimmering scales that reflected rainbow colors. Long thin roots hung down from the canopy like strands of hair, brushing against his shoulders as he passed. Somewhere in the distance a deep booming sound rolled through the ground, a slow and steady rhythm like the heartbeat of something enormous. The two small creatures followed him without fear now, sometimes darting ahead, sometimes circling behind, their chirps blending with the constant buzz and hiss of unseen insects. Cole found it strange how quickly they had decided to stay near him. In wild places, animals usually kept their distance from strangers. He wondered if they had been following him long before he saw them. perhaps from the moment he entered the trees. The path grew narrower as he moved, the roots forming walls on either side. Above him the canopy closed tighter, until only faint light reached the ground. The air felt warmer again, and the smell changed, sharper, almost metallic. Cole slowed his steps, his senses alert. The two creatures also slowed, their ears turning and their bodies lowering slightly as if preparing to flee. From the darkness ahead came a slow rustling sound, the kind made by something very large pushing through leaves. He crouched low, moving forward quietly, until the shape emerged. It was a beast unlike any he had seen, its body long and low to the ground, covered in plates of dark green armor, 6 legs ending in claws that dug deep into the soil, its head broad with a mouth full of curved teeth, its eyes small but locked on him instantly. It hissed, the sound deep and cold, the ground vibrating slightly beneath its weight. Cole knew running was pointless. In a place like this, speed belonged to the hunters. He slid the blade from its sheath in one smooth motion, the steel catching the faint light. The beast stepped forward, its claws sinking deeper into the ground, its head swaying slightly, as if deciding how best to strike. Cole waited, his body still, his mind clear. The two small creatures darted behind a thick root, their chirps now sharp and fast like alarm calls. The beast lunged, its claws tearing at the earth, its jaws wide. Cole shifted to the side at the last moment, the blade flashing upward, the edge cutting across the joint of its front leg. The beast roared, a sound that shook the air. It twisted toward him again, but its movement was slower now, pain slowing its attack. Cole stepped in close, his blade finding the soft spot beneath the armor plates. With a final shudder, the beast collapsed, its breath leaving in a long hiss. The jungle went quiet for a heartbeat before the endless chorus returned. Cole wiped the blade on the moss and stepped back, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. The two creatures crept back out, sniffing the air near the dead beast, but keeping their distance from its teeth. Cole crouched to meet their eyes, a silent exchange passing between man and animal, a small recognition that they had shared the same fight in their own ways. He looked deeper into the jungle, the shadows stretching on without end, the air around him heavy with scents of flowers and blood. He knew he had not yet reached the heart of this place, and the things that lived deeper would not be so easily beaten. But his steps turned forward again, steady and sure, the two creatures falling in beside him as if they had chosen their path as well. Together they moved into the green darkness, the jungle closing behind them like a mouth. The deeper Cole walked into the alien jungle, the more the world around him seemed to shift and change, as if the place had its own heartbeat in mind. The air pressed close against his skin, heavy and wet. Every step sank slightly into the spongy ground which gave under his weight, and then rose again as though alive. The mist coiled in slow patterns around the roots and branches, as if watching him. The two small green-furred creatures padded beside him, their round eyes scanning the shadows there, ears twitching at every faint sound. The light grew dimmer as the canopy thickened above, massive leaves overlapping until only thin threads of gold broke through. The forest floor was a labyrinth of twisting roots and strange plants, some with long teeth like spikes, others with smooth glassy skins that reflected his face back at him in distorted shapes. The air was filled with a constant hum, clicks from hidden throats, hisses from unseen mouths, each noise shifting position as if the whole jungle spoke in one endless voice. Ahead, a wall of tangled vines blocked the path, thick as a ship's rope and covered in sharp-hooked thorns. Cole studied it, running his hand along one vine carefully. It shifted under his touch, slow and deliberate, as if it knew he was there. He drew his blade, and with one strong sweep cut a narrow opening. The sound of tearing plant flesh echoed softly, a faint scent of bitterness drifting up. The two creatures slipped through first, their small bodies weaving past the thorns with ease. Cole followed, his boots scraping against the damp soil on the other side. The air here felt heavier still, a strange heat rising from the ground as if from hidden vents. Cole felt a prickle along the back of his neck, a warning without words. He slowed, his eyes moving across the trunks and shadows. There was movement, too slow to be wind, a shifting of darkness itself, something large watching him from just beyond the reach of the weak light. His fingers curled around the hilt of his blade. A low growl rolled through the undergrowth, deep and steady. the kind that made the bones feel hollow. The two creatures froze, their fur bristling, their round eyes wide and locked on the same patch of shadow. Cole bent slightly at the knees, his body lowering, ready to spring. The growl came again, closer now, vibrating through the ground. Leaves trembled on their stems, and from the darkness ahead something stepped into view. It was taller than a man, even hunched forward, its body long and thick with muscle beneath dark scaled skin, 4 legs and 2 arms, each ending in curved claws, a head shaped like an axe blade with a mouth that opened wider than seemed possible, rows of long fangs dripping with pale fluid. Its eyes small but sharp and fixed entirely on Cole. The air seemed to tighten around them, every sound in the jungle fading for a heartbeat. The beast moved first, a sudden surge forward with shocking speed for something so large. Its claws tore deep gouges in the ground as it lunged. Cole twisted to the side, the edge of its claws passing so close he felt the wind of their movement against his ribs. His blade flashed up in an arc, catching the creature's shoulder, the cut deep enough to draw a roar, a sound that shook leaves from the branches overhead. The 2 small creatures darted into the undergrowth with sharp chirps that echoed through the trees, perhaps warnings to others or calls for help. The beast circled, its movements low and tense, its head tilting as if measuring him. Its tail lashed behind it, striking a tree hard enough to crack the bark. Cole's breath came slow and steady, his stance shifting, 1 foot forward, his weight balanced, eyes locked on the creature's. It feinted left, then lunged right, its jaws snapping for his leg. Cole leapt back, bringing the blade down toward its skull. The beast reared up, both claws striking out at once. The force slammed into his forearm, numbing it. But he kept his grip, twisting away and slashing across the beast's side. Dark blood spilled onto the moss and steamed in the warm air, the smell sharp and metallic. The beast roared again and struck out in fury, its movements wilder now, tearing up chunks of earth and plants in its rage. Cole ducked beneath a sweeping claw, rolled across the damp ground, and came up behind the beast, his blade driving deep into the joint where its back leg met its body. The creature bellowed, spinning with dangerous speed, its tail whipping across his side with a blow that nearly knocked the air from his lungs. Pain flared, but he kept moving, never letting it pin him. The fight became a dance of strikes and retreats, each step measured, each cut placed with care. The jungle seemed to close in around them, vines swaying, leaves trembling as if the plants themselves leaned closer to watch. The ground slick with blood and churned soil. Cole felt the muscles in his arm burn with the effort, but he pressed on, his eyes searching for one last opening. The beast crouched low, its breath coming in hissing bursts, its small eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Then it lunged one final time, with all its weight behind the strike. Cole sidestepped just enough, his blade rising in a swift arc that cut deep into the soft flesh beneath the creature's jaw. The momentum carried it forward past him, crashing into a massive root with a crack that echoed. It twitched once, then lay still, its dark blood pooling and steaming in the heavy air. The jungle's voice returned slowly, the hums and clicks cautious, as if unsure whether the danger had truly passed. He stood over the fallen beast for a moment, breathing deep, feeling the heat of its blood on the damp ground, then pulled his blade free, wiping it on a broad leaf nearby. The 2 small creatures crept back out from the undergrowth, their eyes wide, their chirps soft now, almost questioning. Cole crouched to meet their gaze, speaking in a low voice though they could not understand his words. One of them moved close enough to sniff his boot. Then both sat beside him, their bodies relaxed once more. The kill had been loud, and Cole knew the sound of it would carry through the forest. Other predators might come, drawn by the scent of blood. He scanned the trees around them, every vine and branch a potential hiding place for something worse. The ground still warm beneath his boots from the fight, the air thick with the mingled smells of flowers, damp soil, and fresh kill. He adjusted the strap of his pack and set off again, moving with quiet steps, the 2 creatures slipping easily into place at his side. The path ahead narrowed into a tunnel of arching roots, the light dim and green, drops of moisture falling in slow rhythm from above. Somewhere far off another roar echoed, deeper and slower than the one before, and Cole knew this fight had been only a taste of what the jungle held. The deeper he went, the stranger and more dangerous its life would become. Yet his stride did not falter, his eyes fixed ahead, his blade ready, the jungle alive with whispers all around him, each step carrying him further into the unknown. The air in the jungle was heavy as Cole moved forward, his boots pressing into the damp ground with soft sounds that vanished quickly into the hum of unseen life. The two small green-furred creatures stayed close, their round eyes bright in the dim light, their soft paws silent on the moss, their ears flicking toward every rustle and distant cry above the canopy. Swayed gently, though no wind touched it, the long vines, hanging like the arms of giants, swaying in slow arcs, as if reaching for him. The narrow path of roots and soil twisted until the ground began to slope downward, the soil becoming softer, where the smell of water reached him first, clean and sharp, cutting through the constant perfume of flowers, and Roddy followed it, his steps careful, the sound of flowing water growing stronger with each breath, until at last the path opened into a wide clearing where the mist lifted just enough to reveal a silver ribbon winding between black stone banks. The river was unlike any water Cole had seen. Its surface shimmered, not with the reflection of light from above, but with a light of its own, pale silver that rippled and shifted as though the water carried stars. Within it small fish swam, in darting lines, their bodies glowing faint blue and gold, their scales flashing whenever they turned in the current. The air above the river felt cooler and lighter, carrying the soft scent of something fresh, something untouched by the heat of the jungle. Cole knelt by the edge, dipping his hand into the water. It was cool, almost cold, the chill running up his arm and settling in his chest. He drank deeply, feeling the weight of the heat ease. For a moment the two small creatures padded to the edge, as well, one lowering its head to lap at the water, while the other kept watch on the trees, its ears turning toward a faint clicking sound far off upstream. Across the river the trees grew lower, their roots reaching into the water, as though drinking alongside the animals. Faint ripples broke the surface in the shadows, where something large shifted. Just out of sight, Cole stayed still, his hand resting on his blade. The glowing fish continued their dance, seemingly unaware of whatever waited beyond the dark line of trees. He reached into his pack, pulling out a small roll of cord and a hook he had fashioned from a piece of scavenged metal. He tied the cord carefully, his fingers working without hurry, then baited it with a strip of dried meat, casting it into the slow current. The hook sank beneath the silver glow, and within moments the cord went taut. He pulled it in, and a large fish broke the surface, its body shimmering with gold along its sides. It thrashed, spraying cold drops across his arms, but he held firm, lifting it to the bank, where it flopped once, twice, then stilled, its glow fading slowly, like a dying ember. The two creatures crept closer, sniffing at the fish, one giving a soft chirp as if approving the catch. Cole set to work, cleaning it with swift, practiced cuts, the silver light from the river reflecting off his blade. He gathered dry leaves and a few branches that had fallen from the upper canopy, building a small fire pit against a stone outcrop. He struck sparks from a shard of flint, and soon a thin line of smoke curled upward, blending into the mist above. When the fire took hold, the smell of cooking fish drifted through the clearing, rich and savory. The two small creatures sat beside him, their eyes wide, their noses twitching. The sound of the jungle seemed to soften, as if even the hidden beasts paused to breathe in the scent. Cole turned the fish over, letting its skin crisp in the heat, the crackle of the fire a rare sound in this damp world. As they ate together, Cole noticed the creatures did not snatch or fight for the food. Instead, they waited for him to break small pieces. For them, one chirped softly each time. Before taking a bite, the other would glance toward the trees, between each mouthful, always alert, always watching. When they had eaten enough, they lay down near the fire, curling their bodies against the warmth, their eyes half closed in the dim light. The river's glow deepened as the light above faded, the surface shifting to a richer silver, with streaks of blue. The current carried small flecks of luminous plant matter, drifting like fallen stars downstream. Cole sat with his back to the stone, his blade resting across his knees, his eyes moving between the river and the dark line of trees. Beyond, something moved there, just for a heartbeat, a long shape that slid back into the shadows without a sound. The two creatures lifted their heads, their ears forward, their chirps low and cautious. Cole kept his eyes on the spot, the sound of the river masking any movement from beyond the trees. After a long moment, the shapes of the shadows seemed to merge again, and nothing more came. He eased his grip on the blade, but did not set it aside. A cool breeze rose from the river, curling around the clearing, bringing with it a faint scent unlike anything else in the jungle, sharp but sweet, and strangely metallic. The two creatures sniffed the air, their bodies tensed, their tails flicking in short bursts. Cole could feel the hair on his arms rise, the instinctive sense that something was near, though his eyes could find no shape to match it. He added another branch to the fire, the sparks rising into the air, vanishing quickly in the mist. The warmth spread slowly against the night's cool edge. He knew sleeping here would be dangerous, but moving in the dark would be worse. The river offered a kind of open space rare in the jungle, giving him at least a little view of whatever might come. The two creatures seemed to agree, for they settled again close to the fire, though their ears never stopped moving. Cole leaned back, watching the slow, endless movement of the river, its glow steady, its current calm, yet hiding depths he could not see. The jungle beyond felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for him to rest, waiting for his guard to drop. He had no intention of giving it that chance. His eyes traced the silver water upstream to where it vanished into thick green shadow, and he wondered how far it stretched, what things called it home, and how many of them were watching now. The fire burned low, and he fed it carefully, keeping the light steady, the warmth drawing in not just the creatures beside him, but also small insects with delicate wings that glowed faint yellow. They hovered over the flames, dipping close before darting away, their light joining the silver of the river and the faint blue reflection in the eyes of his companions. The clearing became a small island of light in a sea of green darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a deep sound rolled through the trees, not quite a roar, not quite thunder. Slow and heavy it came again. After a pause, the two creatures stiffened, their eyes wide. Cole's hand closed on his blade again, his gaze sweeping the shadows. Nothing moved, but the feeling in the air had changed. The jungle's hum felt lower, slower, as if something large moved unseen beyond the reach of the river's glow. He stayed that way for a long time, watching, waiting, his senses stretched thin over the clearing, until at last the sounds faded, and the jungle's normal rhythm returned. The two creatures relaxed slightly, one resting its head against his boot, the other curling its tail around its body. The river continued to flow, silent and steady, carrying its light into the darkness beyond. The silver light of the river shimmered in the dark as the jungle around Cole settled into the heavy rhythm of night. The fire burned low but steady, casting a faint orange glow that reached only a few steps into the mist. The two small green-furred creatures lay curled close, their bodies pressed against the warmth, their ears twitching at each strange sound from beyond. The light above the canopy was almost black, only a few thin breaks showing glimmers of cold, distant stars. The air was cooler now, yet thick with scents of damp soil, flowers, and something sharper drifting in from the unseen depths. Cole sat with his back against the stone outcrop, his blade across his knees, his eyes scanning the edge of the clearing where the shadows moved in slow, strange ways. Sometimes they seemed to sway like plants in wind that was not there. Sometimes they seemed to crawl like the limbs of something waiting for the right moment. The jungle's constant hum was softer, now replaced by a series of low, distant calls from creatures he had not yet heard. The sound was deep enough to be felt in his chest, each one followed by long silence, as though the forest was holding its breath. From the darkness to his left came a faint rustle, followed by a sound like claws scratching stone. The two creatures lifted their heads, their eyes wide and glowing faintly in the firelight. One gave a short, sharp chirp, the other stayed silent, staring into the black beyond. Cole turned his gaze that way, his fingers tightening around the hilt of the blade. The rustle stopped, and the jungle went quiet in that direction. Then something pale and thin slipped between the roots, just at the edge of sight, a long shape gliding low over the ground before vanishing again. He waited, breathing slow, his ears straining to catch the faintest movement. A single drop of water fell from the vines above, landing in the fire with a hiss. The sound was sharp in the stillness. The creatures stayed tense, their tails stiff, their gaze fixed on the place where the shape had disappeared. When nothing moved again for several breaths, they slowly lowered themselves back to the ground, though their ears never stopped flicking. Cole fed another branch into the fire, watching the sparks rise and fade into the mist. The light pushed the shadows back a little, but not far enough. He knew the jungle's hunters would circle and wait for weakness. They were patient, and the fire was his strongest weapon here. Still, he could not waste too much. The night would be long, and he needed to keep the flame alive until dawn. He pulled a thick vine from near the stone, breaking it to reveal dry fibers. within it and placed it near the edge of the fire to dry before use. From across the river a new sound came, a slow splash, followed by the faint ripple of water. Something was moving in the silver glow. Just beneath the surface, the fish scattered, flashing gold and blue. In sudden bursts, Cole shifted his gaze. To the far bank, the shadows. There were deep and tangled, the silver light of the water, touching them only in thin lines. For a moment, he thought he saw eyes low to the ground, just above the waterline, glimmering faintly before they vanished beneath the surface. Again, the two creatures gave low, uneasy chirps and moved closer to him, their small bodies brushing against his leg. He could feel the tension in their muscles, the fine tremor of instinct that told them to flee. But they stayed close, choosing the warmth and light over the open dark. Across the clearing, something moved high in the trees, a heavy shape that bent the branches. With each slow step the sound was steady, deliberate, and far too quiet for its weight, until a faint growl rolled down from above like a warning from the shadows themselves. Cole tilted his head, scanning the canopy, until he caught sight of it, a dark outline shifting against the deeper black of the sky, long limbs ending in hooked claws, a head low between its shoulders, eyes catching the firelight for a brief instant before vanishing again. The creature moved in a wide arc around the clearing, always staying above, and just out of the glow its growl followed him in slow intervals, never hurrying, never stopping, just reminding him it was there. Hours seemed to pass in this way, the river flowing silver and silent, the fire crackling low, the watchers in the dark keeping their distance, but never leaving the creatures at his side grew drowsy, their eyes closing for moments before snapping open again, their ears still sharp, their bodies pressed close against his boot. Cole remained awake, his senses stretched to the edge of the light. Every movement of shadow, every change in the jungle's breathing kept him ready. Once the pale, long shape from earlier slid into view again, this time closer, its skin almost luminous in the fire's glow. It had no eyes, that he could see only a smooth surface, where a head should have been, its body twisting as it moved like a ribbon of living muscle. It circled the fire once, then slid away into the dark, leaving only the faint whisper of leaves. Returning to stillness, Cole's grip on his blade never loosened. The night deepened, the mist thickening until the trees at the edge of the clearing became faint silhouettes. The silver light of the river blurred into a shifting haze. The fire's glow flickered against the damp air, casting strange shapes that looked like figures standing just beyond reach, only to melt back into formless shadow. The jungle's hum returned, but softer, as though the world around him was moving at a slower rhythm. The air pressed heavier, the sense stronger, the feeling of being watched constant and unbroken. When the first faint pale light touched the top of the canopy, it felt less like morning and more like the jungle releasing its grip. The deep growls faded into the distance, the slow steps and the branches moved away. The pale ribbon-shaped creature did not return. The sounds of smaller life filled the space again, insects calling in rapid clicks, the faint flutter of wings as birds unlike any on earth began to move through the mist. The two green-furred companions lifted their heads, stretching before padding to the water's edge to drink as though nothing had happened. Cole rose from his place by the stone, his muscles stiff from long stillness. He kicked at the fire, scattering the last embers and letting the smoke curl into the cool air. The river's silver light was fainter, now replaced by the dim reflection of the pale sky above. He scanned the clearing once more, seeing nothing but the shifting mist and the endless green beyond the trees. The watchers had gone, but he knew they had not truly left. The jungle never forgot, and it never stopped testing those who dared to walk within it. The two creatures returned to his side, there for damp from the river, their eyes bright with morning light. He adjusted the strap of his pack, slid his blade back into place, and turned toward the narrow path that led away from the clearing. The jungle ahead waited with open silence, the kind that could change to danger in a single breath. Yet his steps were steady as he moved forward into the green darkness, his companions trotting at his heels, the night's weight still clinging to the air, but the promise of deeper secrets pulling him onward. The silver light of the river shimmered in the dark as the jungle around Cole settled into the heavy rhythm of night. The fire burned low but steady, casting a faint orange glow that reached only a few steps into the mist. The two small green-furred creatures lay curled close, their bodies pressed against the warmth, their ears twitching at each strange sound from beyond. The light above the canopy was almost black, only a few thin breaks showing glimmers of cold distant stars. The air was cooler now, yet thick with scents of damp soil flowers, and something sharper drifting in from the unseen depths. Cole sat with his back against the stone outcrop, his blade across his knees, his eyes scanning the edge of the clearing, where the shadows moved in slow, strange ways. Sometimes they seemed to sway like plants in wind that was not there. Sometimes they seemed to crawl like the limbs of something waiting for the right moment. The jungle's constant hum was softer, now replaced by a series of low, distant calls from creatures he had not yet heard. The sound was deep enough to be felt in his chest, each one followed by long silence, as though the forest was holding its breath. From the darkness to his left came a faint rustle, followed by a sound like claws scratching stone. The two creatures lifted their heads, their eyes wide and glowing faintly in the firelight. One gave a short, sharp chirp, the other stayed silent, staring into the black beyond. Cole turned his gaze that way, his fingers tightening around the hilt of the blade. The rustle stopped, and the jungle went quiet in that direction. Then something pale and thin slipped between the roots, just at the edge of sight, a long shape gliding low over the ground before vanishing again. He waited, breathing slow, his ears straining to catch the faintest movement. A single drop of water fell from the vines above, landing in the fire. With a hiss, the sound was sharp in the stillness. The creatures stayed tense, their tails stiff, their gaze fixed on the place where the shape had disappeared. When nothing moved again for several breaths, they slowly lowered themselves back to the ground, though their ears never stopped flicking. Cole fed another branch into the fire, watching the sparks rise and fade into the mist. The light pushed the shadows back a little, but not far enough. He knew the jungle's hunters would circle and wait for weakness. They were patient, and the fire was his strongest weapon here. Still, he could not waste too much. The night would be long, and he needed to keep the flame alive until dawn. He pulled a thick vine from near the stone, breaking it to reveal dry fibers within it, and placed it near the edge of the fire to dry before use. From across the river, a new sound came, a slow splash, followed by the faint ripple of water. Something was moving in the silver glow just beneath the surface. The fish scattered, flashing gold and blue in sudden bursts. Cole shifted his gaze to the far bank. The shadows there were deep and tangled, the silver light of the water touching them only in thin lines. For a moment he thought he saw eyes low to the ground, just above the waterline, glimmering faintly before they vanished beneath the surface. Again, the two creatures gave low, uneasy chirps and moved closer to him, their small bodies brushing against his leg. He could feel the tension in their muscles, the fine tremor of instinct that told them to flee, but they stayed close, choosing the warmth and light over the open dark. Across the clearing, something moved high in the trees, a heavy shape that bent the branches. With each slow step, the sound was steady, deliberate, and far too quiet for its weight, until a faint growl rolled down from above like a warning from the shadows themselves. Cole tilted his head, scanning the canopy, until he caught sight of it, a dark outline shifting against the deeper black of the sky, long limbs ending in hooked claws ahead, low between its shoulders, eyes catching the firelight for a brief instant before vanishing again. The creature moved in a wide arc around the clearing, always staying above and just out of the glow. Its growl followed him in slow intervals, never hurrying, never stopping, just reminding him it was there. Hours seemed to pass in this way, the river flowing silver and silent, the fire crackling low, the watchers in the dark keeping their distance, but never leaving. The creatures at his side grew drowsy, their eyes closing for moments before snapping open again, their ears still sharp, their bodies pressed close against his boot. Cole remained awake, his senses stretched to the edge of the light. Every movement of shadow, every change in the jungle's breathing kept him ready. Once the pale, long shape from earlier slid into view again, this time closer, its skin almost luminous in the fire's glow. It had no eyes that he could see, only a smooth surface where a head should have been, its body twisting as it moved like a ribbon of living muscle. It circled the fire once, then slid away into the dark, leaving only the faint whisper of leaves returning to stillness. Cole's grip on his blade never loosened. The night deepened, the mist thickening until the trees at the edge of the clearing became faint silhouettes. The silver light of the river blurred into a shifting haze. The fire's glow flickered against the damp air, casting strange shapes that looked like figures standing just beyond reach, only to melt back into formless shadow. The jungle's hum returned, but softer, as though the world around him was moving at a slower rhythm. The air pressed heavier, the sense stronger, the feeling of being watched, constant and unbroken. When the first faint pale light touched the top of the canopy, it felt less like morning and more like the jungle releasing its grip. The deep growls faded into the distance, the slow steps and the branches moved away. The pale ribbon-shaped creature did not return. The sounds of smaller life filled the space again, insects calling in rapid clicks, the faint flutter of wings, as birds unlike any on earth began to move through the mist. The two green-furred companions lifted their heads, stretching before padding to the water's edge to drink as though nothing had happened. Cole rose from his place by the stone, his muscles stiff from long stillness. He kicked at the fire, scattering the last embers and letting the smoke curl into the cool air. The river's silver light was fainter, now replaced by the dim reflection of the pale sky above. He scanned the clearing once more, seeing nothing but the shifting mist and the endless green beyond the trees. The watchers had gone, but he knew they had not truly left. The jungle never forgot, and it never stopped testing those who dared to walk within it. The two creatures returned to his side, there for damp from the river, their eyes bright with morning light. He adjusted the strap of his pack, slid his blade back into place, and turned toward the narrow path that led away from the clearing. The jungle ahead waited with open silence, the kind that could change to danger in a single breath. Yet his steps were steady as he moved forward into the green darkness, his companions trotting at his heels, the night's weight still clinging to the air, but the promise of deeper secrets pulling him onward. The jungle was quiet now as Cole walked away from its edge, carrying the heavy pack on his back, while the two strange fur-covered creatures padded beside him, with their short legs moving fast to keep up, and their big round eyes turning now and then to look behind them, as if making sure the dark trees were staying where they belonged and not creeping closer, because in this place the forest always seemed alive and willing to swallow anyone who lingered too long in its shadow. And Cole had lingered for days, yet here he was stepping out under the bright sky again, with the scent of smoke from the alien village reaching him before the sight of the first house, made of smooth stone and bright cloth, stretched across the roofs. The villagers began to appear as soon as the tall human figure came into view, and whispers ran through them like wind through dry leaves, for they had seen many brave hunters enter the deadly jungle over the years, but none returned except in broken pieces, carried by others who barely escaped, and even then, no one ever brought food from inside the forest, and certainly not living creatures that followed like loyal friends. Yet here was Cole with both, and the sight of it froze many in place as they stared with wide eyes, while the smallest children peeked from behind the legs of their elders. Cole kept walking at the same calm pace, with his head turning slightly to watch the faces that lined the path leading deeper into the village, and his eyes caught both fear and wonder there, and maybe even a little envy, but no one spoke loud enough for him to hear clearly, until an older alien stepped forward from the crowd and raised a long hand with fingers thin as sticks and covered in scales of soft green. The elder's voice trembled as he asked how the human had not been taken by the monsters that hunted in the mists, or the sickness that lived in the water, or the plants that closed like jaws around anything that brushed against them, and Cole only smiled in that quiet human way that offered no answer. Instead, he shifted the pack from his shoulders and lowered it onto a flat stone in the center of the village, where everyone could see, and when he opened it, the smell of cooked meat mixed with the scent of strange glowing fruits and bright leaves unlike anything the villagers had ever touched, and some of the younger ones stepped forward with cautious hands to reach, but pulled back when the elder hissed softly in warning, for they did not yet trust that what came from the jungle could be safe. The two small creatures that had followed Cole sat on either side of him now, and made soft chirping sounds that seemed almost like speech, though no one understood the meaning, and they watched the crowd with alert eyes ready to leap if anyone moved too fast toward their human, and some in the crowd whispered that maybe these were the spirits of the jungle in disguise, while others believed they were just animals tamed by strange human ways. But no one dared to test which story was true. Cole began to take out the fruits one by one, and placed them on the stone while the villagers leaned in to see the way they glowed faintly even in daylight, like drops of moonlight made solid. And then he unwrapped the meat, which was cooked to a rich brown, and still warm, the smell so rich that even the elder could not hide the way his mouth moved slightly at the scent. And Cole spoke at last in a low, even voice, saying that this was a gift from the jungle itself for those who knew how to ask without fear and how to stand without falling when danger came. The villagers murmured among themselves, for his words made little sense to them, yet they felt something in the tone that was heavier than the words themselves, and they knew this human had seen things none of them would dare to face, and still lived. So perhaps there was truth hidden inside his strange way of speaking, and the elder stepped forward again, and took a single piece of the fruit, breaking it open to see the inside, which shimmered with silver threads, and then he ate it without flinching. And when nothing bad happened, he nodded slowly, and the fear in the crowd began to soften into hunger. Soon the villagers were taking pieces of the food and eating while the small creatures chirped happily, and the sun climbed higher above the roofs, and the fear that had once filled the air turned into a strange kind of respect for the human, who had done what they thought was impossible, and yet did not boast or demand anything in return. Instead, he simply sat on the stone with the creatures beside him, and watched them eat, as if the simple act of sharing was enough. By nightfall the story had already begun to change in the telling, for some said the jungle had tried to trap Cole, but he had tricked it with fire and steel, while others said the beasts of the forest had bowed to him like servants to a king, and a few even whispered that the human had made a secret promise to the spirits that ruled the deep places, and that was why the creatures followed him back to the village. Whatever the truth, each telling made Cole seem larger and stranger than before, and even those who had feared him now looked with curiosity. Cole left the food with them and slept under the open sky that night, with the creatures curled against him and the fire casting long shadows on the walls of the houses, and the villagers watching from a distance, afraid to wake him, yet unable to turn away from the sight. And in the quiet he could hear the jungle beyond the edge of the village, still whispering in its endless voice, calling to him like it wanted him to return, and maybe he would one day. For the forest was dangerous, but it was also alive, and to Cole it felt almost like home. In the days that followed, more hunters asked him how he had walked in and out without being taken, and he always gave the same small smile, and said only that it was about knowing which way to step, and when to fight, and nothing more. And with every day that passed, the legend grew bigger than the man himself, until even travelers from far away came to hear the tale of the human who tamed the deadly alien jungle, and returned not with scars, but with food and strange loyal pets. And though Cole knew the truth, he never corrected them, for some stories are better left as legends, and the jungle never forgot his name.